Welcome to our weekly reading where we explore all things astrological. We hope you're doing really well and staying safe out there. From our two different points of view in two different locations in the world, we bring to you a unique astrological perspective on what is happening right now across the globe. So here we go. Hi friends, this is Diana in LA and Cary in the UK, and we're here for another broadcast of Astrology World and this week's stars. And here we are on this smoky day in Los Angeles, and the sky is full of gloom and doom. The skies are orange, the air is full of soot. It is quite apocalyptic feeling, but fortunately, we are having a little bit of a lighter week this week again, and so there's a little relief in store. One of the wonderful things that is occurring this week is the new moon in Virgo, and that will be in Los Angeles Thursday early in the morning at 4 a.m. and noontime in London. So there's a good time, this is a good time to start to put in the intentions that you want for this month for yourself and for our world, for each other. So Cary, what are you noticing there in London?
Well, we're about to have a heat wave, a bit like Los Angeles. And that's going to be happening next week, which will be very, very nice. But what's happening on the astrological front, this will be a really good week for everybody because the sun is going to be trining the stellium and make people feel a little bit lighter about things and better about things that are going on in their world. Also, you've got Mercury, which is in Libra at the moment, which is beginning to square the stellium. So this is an important week for communication and truthful communication. So it's going to be a very interesting week. In the UK, we got very mixed messages from our Prime Minister about what we're supposed to do going forward. And that is kind of replicated by the square of Mercury to the stellium. Because you've got the foundations, which is the Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn conjunction, and you've got the square to it from Mercury, and you've got the beginning of the square again as Mars goes retrograde. So with regards to the long-term outlook, it's quite serious, but on the weekly outlook, it's going to be a lot lighter.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it. I think that the energies feel a little bit lighter personally, right? Like we might feel, again, like we're moving forward a little bit. Things are moving in the direction of maybe there's a vaccine, maybe things are coming out more into the truth with Mercury squaring everything, squaring Jupiter first, then it squares Pluto, then it squares Saturn. There's possibly a lot of deception, but also a lot of discovery, right? And so this is a time to, even in your own self, being self-honest with ourselves, to be clear-minded ourselves. All of that's a little bit challenged, but there's a trine to that stellium too. And so while that sun is trining that stellium, the sun is trining Jupiter, then the sun is trining Pluto, then the sun is trining Saturn. And so there's this energy push and pull between the sun trining everything and the Mercury squaring it. So we've got two energies coming simultaneously. This week, when the moon is new, the sun and moon will be conjunct in Virgo, trining all that Capricorn, right? So it is about the bones of things. It is because it's Capricorn, and it's also about the logic and the clarity and the paying attention mentally.
Yeah, so it's going to be quite a challenging time worldwide. However, I just want to point a few things out. This doesn't necessarily mean that everything that's happening at the moment with the stellium is negative. Because I'd like to just go back a few years with regards to the conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto. So if we go back to, which happens every 13 years. So in 1981, you've got Pluto conjunct Jupiter in Libra, and it was MS-DOS was invented, and on the health side was the start of HIV. 13 years later, when it was in Scorpio, and Scorpio rules sexuality, they found a preventative for HIV. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, and he started it with a company called Next, whose CEO was Steve Jobs, and Amazon started at the same time. So that was 1994. And then in 2007, you had the introduction of the iPhone and the introduction of Google, which just about changed everything. So it doesn't necessarily mean a negativity. It does mean a change of structure, because look what happened when they introduced the World Wide Web. Everything changed. Our whole structure's changed. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this stellium is completely negative. There's some very good things that are going to come out of it. Maybe it will be the technology, digital technology in coming up with solutions to health. It'll be something groundbreaking, because that's the way it's been every 13 years. It just has bigger emphasis now because Saturn is in the mix.
Right. Consequences. And would it affected how we vote? It'd be interesting because in America anyway, with the election coming up, there's much discussion and debate about what's going to happen with voter fraud, the mail-in possible ballots, and everything's being shut down. The post office is being interrupted in its flow in a way that's very Saturn in Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn, right? The breakdown of a basic system of a country. And it'll be interesting to see that maybe perhaps by internet, there will be a way that we can vote but with our cell phone or some other way where we skip that whole system entirely. But I think in order for that to happen, first it has to break down, which is what we're experiencing. And so part of change happens not in the complacency, but in the disruption. And we are having disruption with our systems.
Not only the financial systems, the health systems, the ecological systems, we're being challenged on all those fronts. I mean, look at the ferocity of the fires in California. That's extraordinary. I mean, they recorded one of the highest levels of temperature in Death Valley recently. And, they haven't, in the 50s, I believe. So things are really changing on the ecological side of things, on the health side of things, and also on the digital side of things. We are in for a challenging time, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad time. It could be a time of wonderful discovery, maybe in the area of health, assisted by a certain digital technology, which will maybe make a vaccine much more available, much quicker. I don't know. But something extraordinary is going to happen out of all this. And you mentioned the election. On November the 12th, Jupiter and Pluto are exactly conjunct. And that's about 8 days after the election. And when that happens, it'll be very interesting to see how America is reacting to the results of that election.
Yes, and if those ballots get counted properly, or how much disruption there might be in the results of that election. There's a lot of concern about that here, but it's an interesting time, and hopefully, the highest good wills out, which is what we're always, from a spiritual perspective, waiting and holding for, is that we can let these difficult challenges become activating to change. So it seems exciting in a way, and as we come into the new moon on Thursday, you can use that new moon to actually affect your life. And I really encourage you to do that. It's in Virgo, so it's about the basics, right? And so thinking about what your basics are, your needs being met, how you are of service, all of those things are Virgoic kinds of attributes. And so how can you better take care of yourself, which is one of the things I've been teaching recently in all of my classes, is how can we better take care of ourselves, our body, our health, our mindset, what we're taking in as information, even being selective of what you're listening to and what you're feeding your mind. This is a time to really purify with this new moon, right? That's Virgo, to be pure, to be back to innocence, to erase the board and look again at all this data, and in regard to the world, but also in your own life.
As Mercury starts to square the stellium, we've been feeling it in the UK, where the Prime Minister has reneged on promises he made to the British people about doing a deal with Europe. He said it was oven ready, and now he's reneging on it. This is an effect of the transit of Mercury to the stellium, because Mercury is the planet of communication, the stellium is our foundations, and they're being severely challenged.
And Mars started retrograding last Thursday, and these are the kinds of things that can happen where things flip. We talked about that last week a little bit, that things change directions. So Mars is now retrograding over that stellium in a square relationship, and so these things that were set in stone are not set in stone. They are flipping over. So that has a consequence to the Saturn, right? To the structures, to the systems. And so it's so interesting because you can see it in every place in the world and probably in your own life, where something that seemed like it was definitely this is maybe not so definite anymore or has completely flipped over. The other thing that's happening is that Venus will be conjunct the moon on Monday, which is a beautiful aspect, right, of love and feeling good inside yourself and feeling good self-esteem, and we're going to be okay, and the country's got good self-esteem, the world has good self-esteem. It's in Leo, it thinks well of itself, right? But it's squaring Uranus. So from that square to Uranus is unexpected events about that. So we think we're doing better than we are.
As Mars retrogrades and starts squaring the stellium at the same time Mercury progresses, it will create a T-square with Mars and the stellium, which will prove quite challenging times for our leaders to navigate.
So here we are with another week of our stars and how to work with them. I would say and add to be pure of intent. Keep things simple, sensitized to the environment so that you can sense and know what's really going on right now. It's not what it appears. So how can we use what we're hearing and seeing and talking amongst ourselves about the world and our inner world, because remember, it's all the same. All these aspects affect us too. So the questions for our world and the questions to ourself are similar, even though they're going to be very different answers. So with this new moon energy, take advantage of clearing the slate, erasing the board, beginning again, coming in with new energy to come into this next fall. We're entering fall. The equinox is September 21st, and so that's equal day, equal night across the world. And so here we come into this next season, right, of what is coming for us. And in esoteric terms, the fall is when the energies from the beginning of the year are becoming materialized. They land on the planet, they land into our lives, they become realized. So we're going to see the proof of the pudding and the efforts that have began in spring that are now coming into the form now. So we will see what we were making. And so as we come with this new moon energy, we can use that new moon energy to do adjustments to the energies that are flowing throughout the rest of this year. So on that note, we'll see you next week with another broadcast of Astrology World, and we look forward to seeing you there. We hope you have a wonderful week.
Have a great week, everyone.